Hello neighbor, I'm Andrew Davidson, and I thought it was time for me to tell you my story. This story isn't out for accusation. This story isn't for sympathy. This story, this video, and my work, and the reason why I stayed in that housing situation the way I did, so it wouldn't happen to the next person. It's happening right now in this city, possibly tonight. I first met Jewel Scruggs in August when she moved me off of King Drive, which is approximately 4 or 5 houses down from the longest sitting city councilman, Cliff Holmes. I was only at that house for less than a month. At the time, it was a co-ed dwelling, and there was 3 men and 2 women living in that house. The women had matters that should have been managed in a group home environment. It is actually documented if you look up the address and the 911 calls. Following a few roommate issues with the ladies of the house, in September, the landlord, Jewel, decided to rent another house on Miller Drive. And she was going to make that one an all men's house, and the 421 King Drive would be an all female house. She signed that lease with Redo Management on Green Street on September 9th. We moved in relatively shortly right after. It is very important to note that no person up to and including me has signed no lease with Jewel Scruggs. In November, Jewel had come into the house right before she went on vacation to Illinois and turned the heat off and turned the AC on. The week of Thanksgiving was freezing temperatures. We had vulnerable adults, we had elderly adults, we had disabled adults in that home on Miller Drive. After texting Jewel about the AC, or the heat in the AC, she proceeded to tell me in a text message that she did turn the AC on. One of the roommates, we'll call him P, broke into the lockbox because the thermostat was behind a lockbox, and turned the heat on. When Jewel found out about it, she threatened to remove P without judicial process. That's when I finally spoke up and said something to her in text message. She said she was going to remove him, and I said, no, you're not. I was never late on my rent. That is proven by court order. So December 8th comes around, and I'm sure some of you have seen the video already. She proceeds to take my door off the hinges. She proceeds to take my bed and my possessions out the room. And up to this point, she has never declared possession, provided written notice, or filed an eviction notice with magistrate court. She garners battery charges, trespassing charges, stalking charges on her. I called the police in that first week upwards of 7 or 8 times on physical mechanisms, not civil complaints. The first phone call was a civil complaint for doing self-eviction without the judicial process, but also it included property and physical harm as well. The next few months are important to sequence correctly. The week of December 8th, I had called several actors in the city, from Terry Wood to zoning to Miss Bird, the ADA coordinator, Salvation Army. I've talked to Victims Advocate. Near the end of the week of December 8th, I did walk to the City Hall, up to the executive floor, and I spoke with a gentleman about everything going on at Miller Drive. I spoke of ADA deficiencies. I spoke of elderly abuse. I spoke of self-help eviction. I spoke on mismanagement and miscare of state and federal benefits, up to and including TANF and Medicaid, and dispensing of pharmaceuticals without a license. I spent nearly 30 minutes talking to this gentleman on the executive floor with CCTV cameras all around monitoring, and I was recording, obviously. It took me a few weeks after leaving the City Hall, when I tried to look up who I had called in August about the sinkhole, that the man I spoke to on the executive floor and that went and shrugged and told me he didn't know what to tell me to do was James Drinkard, the city administrator himself. Me and Jewel went to court. The chief magistrate, Angela Sammons, told Jewel that she had to refile in January because she listed herself as the landlord on the eviction paperwork, and she was not the registered landlord, and we didn't have a lease between myself and Jewel. So the hearing got rescheduled after she refiled. We both presented arguments. In the end, Judge Sammons ruled no possession, but she had to think about it for a while. And that brings us to February 19th. In this meantime, I spent roughly 70 days without a bed and a door, getting pepper sprayed. No safety, no peace. I did slip and fall, already with an aggravated back condition because of the no bed, sleeping on the floor. I slipped on the floor, went to the emergency room twice about it. The day of February 19th, I woke up and could not move out. I emailed the courthouse at 6 o'clock in the morning and requested a continuance due to my back, an 8-mile one-way walk, and stormy conditions with no suitable sidewalk access to the court. Chief Magistrate Angela Sammons went and decreed default judgment because of no appearance, while on the same day decreed an order in my favor for illegal self-eviction. Over the same tenancy period that I was still not in default of with rent, as proven in court. Because of that default, the rent moved forward. I did file an appeal, and I did file a set aside. The judicial process on the civil side is not complete, especially with the landlord, the management company, and the owner. That will come out in due process. Unfortunately, with the new developments, the civil side will be put on hold to handle the most important part, the criminal side, the one side that does affect my civil liberties and my constitutional rights. March 9th, late at night, Jewel Scruggs decides to text me a text message with 2 pictures of my nude body and said she was going to send those pictures to the executive staff and city council of Warner Robins. For context, this lady has thrown trash cans worth of trash in our driveway, in the living room. She moved cameras. On days of court, she had called law enforcement to come do searches on my room. There was already a thread with the executive staff and the city council about these deficiencies, mainly to keep a record intact. So I emailed the executive staff that night and the city council and the executive assistant of the police chief and told them any email from Jazz Tangibles and Jules Scruggs should not be opened because they contain sensitive images taken without my consent. I also told Jules Scruggs that night that she had captured my images without my consent. The next morning, Sergeant Mann of the Warner Robins Police Department of the CID division calls me and requests to take my phone for approximately 6 to 8 hours to download the metadata off my phone. The images did not originate from my phone. They originated from an internal camera system within the home. The system is tied directly to Jules Scruggs' device and accounts accessed by Jules Scruggs. So there was no reason to capture my device for these images. I did email them to him. It is important to note I had consistently and persistently chased after a TPO from Mr. Shane Jones and Miss Jules Scruggs for the chemical sprays and the battery since December, and every single time I had crossed a hurdle with the Salvation Army, Debbie Kamal, she would tell me that she had already sent the TPO request to the judge, or she would send me a new hurdle to jump over for a TPO. As of today, in June, I still do not have a TPO or any restriction on Jules Scruggs or Shane Jones. Sergeant Mann contacted me. He did not do a full investigation. He did not contact me anytime after that. In fact, I got a subpoena from the sheriff, the same sheriff who served the writ, and the same sheriff who sent me a text stating that he had seen my writ order and put the writ for the eviction on hold. Sergeant Banks. It is important to note that both courts, state and magistrate, said they could not find my appeal. And that's why the writ went through, even with the sheriff stating that he actually saw the appeal. That's why the dockets are important. And then Sergeant Banks proceeds to give me a subpoena to appear in court. I didn't follow up or ask questions. I assumed as victim witness. I get to court. I had another matter processing, harassing phone calls, which was allowed to expand on scope. It is important to note that Chief Magistrate Angela Sammons, the same judge who presided over my civil matters with Jules Scruggs, proceeded over my criminal matters at magistrate. She heard the harassing communications argument first, put that matter on hold, sent the plaintiff out into the lobby, and we proceeded with the public indecency. Jules Scruggs did not show up for that hearing. There was an automatic failure to appear warrant put out on her. Sergeant Mann is on record stating that he never did discuss anything with Jules Scruggs. He never made contact with her, and he never reviewed the evidence fully except for the images I sent over. He stated in court, as him and the judge looked up the statute together to better understand it in front of me, after I asked for continuance for an attorney and was denied, they both decided that the reason for the arrest would be public indecency with line of sight to the public outside of my own residence that I was living in, with the window closed and the door closed as well. Very evident in the photos. Chief Magistrate Angela Sammons denied several times to look at those images, while in the other case, she looked at images from the plaintiff. So she ruled on me and found just cause for public indecency, went back to the other matter of harassing communications, found just cause for that, and then I was wrongfully arrested. The rest will come out in court. By this time, you're like, okay, Drew, how does this intersect with the city besides certain elements? Well, the city was on notice for an ante-litem since February. So there was knowledge of an ante-litem before the images came into the picture. I'm not going to say it. I'll let you draw your own conclusions. But it's curious how I send an alerting email on images taken of me with cameras being deactivated for a month prior to that, with all our civil and housing issues going on, that my notice turns into an arrest on me with public indecency with no view to the public. So now you're asking yourself, how does this intersect with Haven Hope House? After the writ was served, I found myself in a position where I never thought I would ever find myself, near homelessness. So before the writ was served, I reached out to Brian Wise. I was trying to secure a spot at Haven Hope House since the ribbon cutting was in October. I figured it was in full operation. That was February. The writ was served in March. Ribbon cutting in October. And then you've seen my reports and you've seen my archives since. Jewel Scruggs and Jazz Tangibles is a landlord operating in this local region that is operating outside the color of law. The city is on notice. The city does know about her. In fact, Jewel Scruggs has exclaimed several times about proximity friendships with the mayor and several city councilmen. 3 city councilmen have reached out to me to discuss with me since January. And after I asked them to talk in person, not in casual DM chats on Messenger, they went silent. And the longest sitting city councilman, Clifford Holmes, who is the councilman over the district in which she has 2 houses in the city, has yet to reach out. So the awareness needs to be spread. Since December to March, she has put out 4 elderly, disabled adults without due process. 65% of Warner Robins homeless is due to illegal self-evicting landlords. And we have one of them operating here in Warner Robins in Houston County. She has 2 in Warner Robins that I know of for sure. She has 1 in Fort Valley, she has 1 in Perry, and she has 1 in Macon. She has proclaimed that she works for the Bibb County Sheriff's Department. She is documented with planning and zoning on several artifacts. So please, share this for awareness. This is not anything small. Homelessness is not a choice ongoing. It could be an elderly adult. It could be your cousin. It could be your sister. It could be your brother. It could be an 18-year-old who just got out of high school who knows nothing about their rights, and they get evicted without due process, and now they're homeless. So I want to thank you for spending the last 20, 25 minutes. I don't know how long this is actually going to be because I'm going to cut it down. But thank you for watching this video, and thank you for watching this far if you made it this far. Please share this out. Please get the awareness out. please follow my story. Please follow my story. I have a GoFundMe that is not for lifestyle, that is not for a safety, that is not for me or housing, that is for FOIA requests. I have 2 in with the city of Warner Robins now. They are pretty in depth, but the reason I have the GoFundMe is not for the funding itself. It is the perfect platform where I keep all the archives together in one collection. It makes it easier to traverse the sequence. So thank you for joining me tonight, and I hope this cleared up the picture a little bit, and more to come, June 25th, 2026.